Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the 134th session of the online Optom Learning Series. And for today's session, we have with us, I think Aditya sir needs no introduction to most of us who are on this call today. But just, as a customary, let me go ahead and introduce Optom Aditya Goyal. He is a graduate from Elite School of Optometry in the year 1989. And he then went ahead to complete his MS in clinical optometry from the Pennsylvania College of Optometry, Salus University. He has been practicing the art and science of optometry since 1991. So with all that vast experience, currently he is also a fellow of the COVD and is pursuing PhD and fellowship at NORA. He is a clinician, and along with his clinical practice, he has very keen interest in academics. With that interest, he was instrumental in establishing colleges of optometry in Chennai, Bangalore, and Ludhiana, which was along with Shankara Eye Care Group of hospitals. These colleges are running optometry programs for bachelor's as well as for master's level. And presently, he is the principal of Shankara College of Optometry, Bangalore. And he has been a mentor to a lot of optometrists. I think including me, sir has been a mentor during my school days and even today. He is also an adjunct faculty at the Pennsylvania College of Optometry at Salus University, US. And being into the interest of optometric education, he is also presently the president of ASCO, which is the Associations of Schools and Colleges of Optometry in India. He was also very instrumental in writing the CMOC, which is the Common Minimum Optometric Curriculum in India, which is the Indian Entry-Level Optometric Competency, which is also known as IELOCS. He has also been instrumental in formation of a couple of master's program across the country. And he was also a member of the task force which was created by the government of India, which was to work on standardizing the curriculum and also the practice of optometry in India. With all that experience, his specialization is in vision therapy, neurovision, behavioral and developmental optometry and pediatric optometry, and also low vision. So he lectures across India as well as abroad in this topic. And today, sir is going to talk to us about, I think this is, I would say it's a hot cake topic, digital eye strain or DES. Everybody is talking post-COVID, during COVID, pre-COVID. What is DES and are we really sure about this? So welcome, sir, onto our platform. And let me leave this screen time to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Fakhruddin, for those wonderful words. Listening to all that, I think I'm pretty old now. I think I should be kicking the bucket soon. But then before that, I will trouble a lot of people, which is my usual habit. I'm sure, like you said, sometimes I have taught you also, so I must have troubled you also with all the questions. Because for me, a question is the most important thing. And unless we get answer to that question, we can't move forward. And this is why I started, even the topic is, are we sure what it is? I mean, are we really sure what digital eye strain is? We all talk, like you just said, COVID, post-COVID, pre-COVID, everything. We have been talking of digital eye strain. Now, are we really sure that there's something called digital eye strain, or are we making something big out of it? And we don't know. So let's see. Like Fakhruddin mentioned, we would like this session to be as interactive as possible. I hate silence because unless I get questions, I don't know if you people are listening or sleeping. In most cases, it's the other way around, where people are sleeping. But then let's hope today I keep you awake, especially Fakhruddin, because it's almost about 9:15 for him right now. Okay, so I'd like to begin by thanking umpteen number of optometrists, scientists, philosophers, thinkers, etc., who have evolved my thoughts, and also would like to thank all my friends. I do have some foes also, and colleagues in the field of vision therapy, behavioral optometry, developmental optometry, etc. They have been instrumental through their questions, through their arguments. They have been instrumental in molding whatever I think today and also what I practice. Basic learning objectives of this talk are to initiate thinking in terms of relationship between visual task and visual stress. Visual task being your digital medium, and visual stress we'll discuss. Like I said, we should believe in the basics. So physiology is a basic of everything. So we have to understand physiological mechanisms. I'll be talking a lot about Skeffington. Skeffington is considered to be the father of behavioral optometry. And to me, he is something like a godfather. Though I never seen him, I've only heard him on the recorded lectures and talks, etc. But then he's in 1930s, 1940s, what he could talk on or what he could think. Even today in 2020, people cannot. So we need to understand the relevance of whatever he spoke in 1940s when there was nothing called computers. Mobile phones, computers, all those things had not even existed. And he was talking about similar kind of ideas at that time. Of course, this is not an exhaustive talk in any way. So there are lots and lots to understand and think in this topic. So we'll be end of this talk. We should be able to understand the basis of visually related stress and fatigue and kindle a little bit of interest in visual stress and its relationship to behavioral optometry. Now, when we talk about digital eye strain or asthenopia, etc., first thing what we need to understand is what is visual stress. So visual process and the general system. When I say general system, I'm talking of the general physiological system, the general body, and the general stress. So all these things go hand in hand. Like we always say, eyes lead the body. So unless the eyes are leading the body, you are not talking in terms of general system. You're not talking in terms of the stress and how they correlate. Now, visual processing or vision is a dominant function which is required to operate in this world and also derive meaning from it. I may be able to see something, but is that seeing everything? Am I able to understand what that is? So, deriving meaning from whatever I'm seeing, visual processing, that is very, very important. For example, I may see some figure, but if I have never seen it earlier, will I be able to find out what it is? So that is called cognition. And from cognition, when I see it again and over again, we are able to recognize it, and that is called recognition. So recognition. And that is what the visual function is all about. And our living, everything is related to that and dependent on that. So let's understand some of the principles. Now, when we talk of stress, what is stress? It's a normal reaction the body has when changes occur. Any change may occur. It may be the temperature, it may be recently we had or we have COVID happening. So that has led to a lot of stress. Every student is saying, because of COVID, because of the pandemic, this has happened, because of the stress, this has happened. Everyone is talking about it. So these stress can be a response to the changes which are physical, mental, or emotional. And how the body adjusts to these and how we are able to respond to these is what is important. So one can experience stress from environment, body, thoughts, including the positive thoughts, positive changes. You may get promotion, you get elated. Is that not a stress? It may be a positive stress, but then it is still a stress. Birth of a child, anything, anything is a stress. It can produce a stress. Now, I don't want to read them out. All of you know the signs of stress. So, muscle tension in neck, face, or shoulder, tiredness and exhaustion. I have highlighted these two. Now, these are very important from our perspective when we are talking of digital eye strain today. Okay. So, I Googled this. So, Google Dada says visual stress is characterized by symptoms of visual perceptual distortions, headaches, and eye strain when viewing repetitive patterns, including lines of text. This is Google definition of visual stress. Symptoms of visual perceptual distortion, headaches, eye strain when viewing repetitive patterns, including lines of text. Okay, so we are talking in terms of digital strain. Obviously, we are looking at the screen and some text or some patterns, which is the pictures. We are looking at that. Now, I Googled for what is visual fatigue. Visual fatigue occurs when certain eye muscles tighten during visually intense tasks. Now, this is leaving us very, very complicated. Which eye muscles are we talking of? Being optometrists, all of us know that there are extraocular muscles and muscles in the lid, and then there are smooth muscles within the eye. So, eye muscles tighten during visually intense tasks, including continuously focusing on computer monitors. The tightening of the eye muscles can cause the eyes to become irritated and uncomfortable. A very, very basic definition given in Google, but that creates a lot of misunderstanding and misapprehension in our heads. So it straight away gives us to think that it is because of the muscles, the extraocular muscles, they are tightening, and that is causing all the stress. And other symptoms of visual fatigue include blurred vision and headaches. Okay, so my first question. How many of you feel that accommodation is the culprit behind visual fatigue, visual strain, asthenopia, etc.?
Okay, sir. So I have launched the poll, and let's see. Would request everyone to just give in your thoughts.
Perfect.
Right. So you have three options: yes, no, or probably you are unsure. Whatever you think, is accommodation the culprit behind visual fatigue, visual strain, and asthenopia? Okay, so another 5 seconds.
We have about 80% polling with 90, 89, 88% saying yes. Wonderful.
Yeah, so I'm just going to share the results, sir. So yeah, about 89%, 100 says yes, accommodation is the culprit, and we have about 7 odd people or 6% people on other sides of no and unsure.
Great. So most 90% of you feel that accommodation is the problem behind it, right? Now, let me ask you a question. Do pseudo fakes or affakes never experience eye strain or visual fatigue or asthenopia? If yes, then I want you to think again. Is accommodation really the culprit? Okay. Okay, the next one. How many of you feel convergence is the culprit?
Okay, so the same thing again. What do you think about convergence? First question was about accommodation. This is related to convergence. Okay, I think the results are quite going on the similar
Similar lines. Yeah.
Yeah, similar lines, and majority of them, I see the poll is towards yes. Most of us feel that convergence is also the culprit. So 80% says
It's
yes,
technically
and
the same.
yeah, technically the same. Right.
So this is what we expected, and because this is where I said let us think about it. So we want to think. So how many of you blame laptops, tablets, or digital devices for increase in non-strabismic binocular vision disorders?
Okay, so I've launched the poll again. So that's
Again, going on the similar lines.
that's right. And somebody does comment that maybe they are they are not the only culprit, but they might be a part of the cause. So like somebody commented on the chat.
Good.
All right. Okay. So yeah, similar results, sir. About 84% thinks that yes, lifestyle is probably having some or a lot of increase in non-strabismus binocular vision problems,
All right.
and very few say no and unsure.
Okay, I think this they will have to jot down or something. I don't know. What do you think are the prevalence rates of non-strabismic binocular vision anomalies today?
Yeah. So we can have it on the chat.
Yeah.
What do you think? You can put it up on the chat and we'll take it up. So, what do you think? What is your thoughts about how many, what is the prevalence, or how many people do you think have non-strabismic binocular vision dysfunction today? You can put it up on the chat. Somebody says 98, 90%. So it's quite
Wow,
high. Uh,
that's fantastic.
yeah. People also are saying about 60 to 70%
Hmm.
as well. But I guess, yeah, majority are going toward the higher end. A few people are also saying lower end, such as 10% to 35% as well. So
Okay.
it's most of on the higher side to what I can see on the chat.
All right. So what is the lowest that they say?
The lowest I got is 8%, and the highest was about 90%.
Okay. All right. And what do you think were the prevalence rates of non-strabismic binocular vision disorders almost 20 years back? I think you are getting to understand where I'm leading you.
Yeah. So let's see. So what do you think it was before 20 years back? So less than 50%. Somebody says now the percentages are getting lower. I mean, that's what I
Okay.
said.
Okay.
5%,
Hmm.
10%. So it's on the lower end, sir.
All right.
Lesser than what we
Great.
have now. So that's what the understanding is.
Okay. We'll get back to these. Now, let me tell you, the prevalence rates, what are quoted nowadays, are about 30 odd percent, and they have almost remained the same all through these years. Now, my question is for the past 20 years, the use of devices, how much has that increased? I mean, I don't want to ask anybody. It's a common understanding that it has increased, I don't know how many percents, more than much more than a few hundred percents, right? So I don't, let's say in 2000 versus 2020, the use of devices has increased drastically. Now, when the use of these devices have increased so much, how is it that the prevalence of non-strabismic binocular vision disorders have remained almost similar? So we need to think somewhere. What is the actual cause for all this? Now, on what population were these studies conducted? The studies that were conducted for determining the prevalence of non-strabismic binocular vision disorders, on what population were they conducted? Invariably, these studies were conducted on patients who were coming to the hospital or the clinics. Obviously, people who are coming to the hospital or clinics are the people who are having problems. So can you call that prevalence? I can consider that to be prevalence in the hospital or the clinic situation, but I cannot generalize it to the general population. Can I? How many of you feel I can generalize a clinical population to the general population? So let's say I'm in a diabetic clinic and I say I'm going to check the prevalence of diabetes in this clinic. What do you think will be the prevalence?
Very high, close to 100%.
Almost 100%.
Almost 100%.
So one of my students very recently, she said, I want to check the prevalence of glaucoma in a glaucoma clinic. As I can tell you the answer straight away. I don't need to ask anybody. You don't need to do a research on that.
That's right.
So if you're checking the prevalence of non-strabismic binocular vision disorders in clinical population, it's going to be pretty high. Similarly, all these studies, most of these studies, I'll just show you what we have done. You see over here, you see this. This is a study which was done by uh, a very good friend of mine, Dr. Robert Sennett's daughter, Pilar. So she has done the study where she collected all the research work that has been done for past 20 odd years. And she found that these were the population types. Most were optometry clinic, school, optometry clinic. So all your study is either the school going population, which is up to about 17, 18 years of age, or clinical population. So are you going to find out the exact amount of prevalence in general population? No. Now you see the prevalence rates which have percentages which have varied. You see the prevalence percentage from 3.5% to 33%. Okay. Now prevalence of convergence insufficiency has ranged from 2.25% to 33%. Can you imagine a condition where the prevalence rates are 2.25% to 33%? A huge difference. I hope all of you agree with me. Okay. Now, we know, all of us, whether we like binocular vision and vision therapy or not, but then all of us we have gone through the program in binocular vision where we understand that for determining convergence insufficiency or accommodation problems or any of these vergence issues, there are certain signs which are taken into consideration. For example, for convergence insufficiency, I'm going to talk in terms of near point of convergence. I'm going to talk in terms of the fusional ranges, base out fusional ranges for distance and near. I'm going to talk in terms of the foria for distance and near. I'm going to talk in terms of binocular accommodative facility. I'm going to talk in terms of the vergence facility. So the number of signs which were taken into consideration to find out the prevalence. Now you see, when they take 5 signs into consideration, the prevalence was only 3.5%. And when they take 1 sign into consideration, prevalence is rising to almost about 18.3 to 33%. It's a huge difference. So this also matters. For example, COVID, if you're able to find out on the basis of only 1 symptom or 1 sign versus you take 4 signs or 5 signs or whatever, the prevalence rates will keep changing. So I hope all of you are aware. We just discussed labeling the science that we use for labeling someone as having non-strabismic disorders and calculating the prevalence rates. Okay. Now, okay, this is an old one, right? Accommodative insufficiency. Now, when they took only one sign into consideration, you see the prevalence rate, almost 60%. 2 signs, 3 signs, 4 signs, 5 signs, it starts dropping down. Why does it happen that way? Obviously, when I'm using more number of signs to label a person as having some particular disorder, the prevalence rate will come down. So we do not even know when we say 30%, 40%, 60%, what is the sign that is used? If it is only near point of accommodation, then obviously the prevalence is very high. But then we know that we have other direct tests and other indirect tests to consider something as a syndrome, as a disorder. Can we just take one single sign and consider it to be a disorder? So think about it. The convergence insufficiency. Again, you see, when the number of signs were reduced, the prevalence has come down. Any thoughts on this? Can we give them some time to think about it, Fakhruddin?
Sure. We can. I
So
mean,
if you have any thoughts, if you can jot it down on the chat.
sure. So you can put it up on the chat. What do you think? Is it, what are your thoughts about this?
So it's something like a digital eye strain. Now, when there's digital eye strain, are we looking at something that is causing a problem? Are we looking at only eye strain? Are we looking at headache plus eye strain? Are we looking at the non-strabismic binocular vision disorders? So we need to think about it. Okay. Now, the results of the study done by Pilar were there's a wide range of prevalence, particularly for accommodative insufficiency from 2 to 61.7% and convergence insufficiency from 2.25 to 33%. Most studies are available for children compared with the adults. Adults are only 3 studies. Most of the studies examined clinical population and 3 assessed the school and 1 at university. The adult population was only university or schools who were later in school. Sample size varied from 65 to 2048 patients. Obviously, that is going to cause a lot of differences in prevalence rates. There's a great variability regarding the number of diagnostic signs ranging from 1 to 5 clinical signs. Like we just discussed, when we had 5 clinical signs, the prevalence rates were down. When we had 1 clinical sign, the prevalence rate was very, very high. So they found a relationship between the number of clinical signs used and the prevalence values for convergence insufficiency, although this relationship cannot be confirmed for other conditions. So practically everything, this was what the results were. So we know that what the data that we have today is not sufficient. We are talking of a lot of things, just looking at something like you're scaring somebody saying that so much of these problems are there, so better do this, better do that, etc., etc. Next thing that we take into consideration is the type of personalities. There are different types of personalities. I'm sure out of 160 odd people who are here, we have people of different personalities, the people who get very anxious, people who remain very calm. Okay. So do you think that that leads to some kind of stress? The personality types can affect the stress. Obviously, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, that is varying over there. So, okay, fine. How many of you agree with me that iris muscles, which is the pupil dilator and constrictor muscles, work tirelessly throughout the day? It works. I mean, I don't even have to ask that. But do you experience any pain or tiredness of iris muscles? It's working throughout the day. Does it pain? Does it get tired? Does it ache? Do you feel aching of your iris muscles? I don't know.
Yeah. Most of them are saying no.
Yeah.
Most of them are saying no, they don't feel tired.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, otherwise, then we'll not be able to do anything.
Yeah.
What about the ciliary muscles? Now, iris muscles, are they not extension from the ciliary body? Iris is an extension of ciliary body.
True.
So don't you think the phenomenon of iris as well as the ciliary muscles is similar? So if they work similarly, can the ciliary muscles get tired? Obviously, the lens, the crystalline lens doesn't have any um pain receptors. I hope all of us agree. The zonules don't have any pain receptors. They are not connected to any nerves. So it is only the ciliary muscles. So if the ciliary muscle, why do we always say that ciliary muscles are used when I'm looking at a digital device or a book or near object? If I'm looking at 1 meter, am I not accommodating? I'm sure all of you will agree that we are. I am accommodating for any distance. So whether it is more accommodation or less accommodation, ciliary muscle is working throughout the day, right? Coming to the anatomical perspective of nervous system, all of us know, I don't even have to go into it, that there's a central nervous system, there's a peripheral nervous system, and there's a autonomic nervous system. Ciliary muscles, iris muscles, they are supplied by which one? Which of these? All of us understand they are all supplied by the autonomic nervous system. Okay. Your heart, if your heart, because it is pumping day in, day out, it will start aching like crazy. And then I don't think we will be able to live properly. So these are the smooth muscles which are supplied by the autonomic nervous system, and they work throughout the day in, day out, they work, they function. And there has to be a good homeostasis, the equilibrium which exists in all these things. That was the anatomical part. Now, coming to the functional perspective, we have the somatic, which is the skeletal, and the visceral, which is the smooth muscles. Now, all of us understand the extraocular muscle, the 6 extraocular muscles. They are skeletal muscles, and your ciliary muscle, your iris muscles, they are the visceral. Okay. And there has to be a good relationship between the skeletal and the visceral system. For example, when you accommodate, you know the triad. I don't have to talk about it. When you look at anything near, your convergence happens, and along with that, the pupil constricts. So the ciliary muscles, they constrict. That leads to accommodation, which again leads to the medial recti constricting, causing convergence, and the pupils constricting, the sphincter pupillae constricting. So that leads to your pupil constriction. We don't need to even discuss this, right? Arnold Jessel in 1950 made this observation. He said skeletal, sensory, and the motor branches of somatic, they seek and hold the visual image. Which ones? The convergence part. It seeks, it looks at something and holds it there. Unless I'm fixating at an object, unless I seek and hold it, fixate at it, I will never be able to observe it. I will never be able to find out what it is. If I'm reading right now, my recti muscles, they are holding my eyes onto the screen and then keeping it right there. Now, the visceral, which is the sensory and the motor branches of visceral and autonomic nervous system, they discriminate and define. So, whatever I was holding visually, my accommodation, that discriminates and defines it. Whatever I was seeing, it defines the visual image. And cortical, which is the integration of brain and spine that unifies and interprets the visual image. Your eye is only related to seeing. Now that seeing is happening where it goes to the brain, and it combines with the rest of the cortical system and interprets it. It's a beautiful way in which he talked about it. Very simple, straightforward. Your skeletal system, that is your uh, erecti muscles or the oblique muscles, the skeletal muscles that seeks and holds the visceral, it defines, and then all this information goes to your cortex after combining with the information from your speech, auditory, etc., etc., and it unifies all this information and interprets the visual image. Any questions anyone has?
All right. So, okay, if you have any questions, I think please feel free to put it up on the chat, and I can just interrupt, sir, and take some questions. And I think for the question just now, sir, you were asking about factors. When we were talking about one factor, is it enough? So a couple of people said that we always look for more than one, and we look for multiple factors.
Absolutely.
We come out.
So when you look for multiple factors, we don't end up classifying that as a non-strabismic disorder.
That's right.
Right. So the factors that we are taking into consideration for prevalence, we should be careful when we are quoting all these.
Yeah.
Okay, now very simple ocular defects. We divide it into focus conditions and muscular conditions. Focus conditions basically divide into emetropia and ametropia, which is ametropia being hyperopia and myopia. I'm just keeping it very simple and not including astigmatism, etc., etc. Muscular condition, you have orthophoria and heterophoria. And heterophoria, again, ESO and EXO. Again, not complicating it with hyper and cyclo and all that. So these are the basic ocular defects that we knew. Now, what is ideal eye and what is natural eye? All of us, when we go back to this, all of us say emetropia is ideal. We will say orthophoria is ideal. Is that really so? I don't think I have to tell anybody who Dr. Sir Duke Elder was. All of us have seen the chronicles that he has written. In 1946, he made this very interesting statement. By the way, my presentation is going to be a lot of statements which I'll be reading out from these great people. So basically to make us understand or try to understand what this entire phenomenon is. So in 1946, he said, it would be strange if emetropia was a common state of affairs, for its attainment depends on an exactitude to within a fraction of a millimeter of such measurements as the length of the eye and the shape of the cornea and the lens. What he meant was a 1 millimeter change in the length of the eye or the corneal curvature or the lenticular curvature, etc. It will change a lot. And such regularity and conformity to type as optical perfection would demand a mathematical accuracy which is nowhere realized in the constitution of living organisms. That much of accuracy of length, curvatures, etc. It's not possible. Emetropia may be optically normal, but it is no more biologically normal than would be universal attainment of a uniform height of 5 feet 6 inches. If we have a uniform attainment of height of 5 feet 6 inches, attaining emetropia is that much more difficult or that much more abnormal. So emetropia is not the normal condition, though optically it is considered normal. Emetropia cannot be behaviorally, cannot be considered as a normal condition. Thorington in 1947 described hyperopic eye as natural eye. He called it eye of nature. Homeostatic mechanism allows the accommodation and convergence to operate together in harmony, and whatever is stimulating accommodation will stimulate convergence and vice versa, and it keeps happening. So Skeffington felt that hyperopia was a range that acted to protect the accommodation mechanism from stimulation by convergence. I'll read it again. I'll try to explain this again. Hyperopia was a range that acted to protect the accommodation from stimulation by convergence. So when a person converges, what happens to accommodation? He will need to accommodate. But if he accommodates more and it was emetropia, what will happen? Will he not go into myopia? Okay. The fact that we keep talking today, over accommodation leading to myopia. Okay. So hyperopia was a range that acted to protect the accommodation mechanism from stimulation by convergence. And he also felt that exophoria protected the convergence from stimulation by accommodation. Okay. So if accommodation is stimulated, what happens? Convergence will be stimulated. And if convergence is stimulated, what will happen to phoria? If it was orthophoria, don't you think he will converge more and cause esophoria? So exophoria is the buffer which is protecting convergence from stimulation by accommodation. Now, this is the homeostasis mechanism that exists between the skeletal system and the autonomic nervous system, which is your ciliary and the pupillary mechanisms. I see some questions popping up. Anyone wants to ask something or has some thoughts?
Most of them are just commenting, sir, that they are agreeing to the thoughts what you are sharing with them. Yeah.
Okay. So Elliott Forrest, another great optometrist, in 1959, he made this analogy, very interesting analogy. Let's say this is a wooden beam, simple wooden beam, and there's a spring and there's a weight attached. Okay. And weight is your accommodation. Beam is a convergence mechanism integrity. Weight is a stressor which is affecting the convergence mechanism. And spring is the dynamic homeostatic mechanism absorbing the effects of the stress. Now, if I increase accommodation or increase the stress, what happens? The spring elongates a little. I increase the stress even further. The spring elongates further and becomes totally taut. I add more stress. What happens? This is not able to take that stress, and the convergence mechanism, that is the beam, it develops a crack. I mean, this is simple, very simple way in which, anything, you can do it at home. This will happen. There will be a certain amount of weight or the stress that the spring can take, and beyond that, the beam is going to develop a crack or it will bend down. Okay. Now, the possible ways to avoid this breakdown are reduction in pressure on the system, decrease near point work. First of all, is it possible? It's very easy for us to say, do not do near point work. But is it possible? Okay. The second way is replacing the spring with a stronger one, that is building reserves of exophoria. I am no way saying that you make exophoria, 10 prism exophoria, 20 prisms exophoria, but certain reserve, 4 prisms, 5 prisms of exophoria, that is a reserve, the buffer which is there. And when people say orthophoria, my eyebrows raise, because orthophoria is more of ESO. Because like I said, if it is ortho and the person has to accommodate, what happens? It will lead to ESO, and ESO is not acceptable. The third way is to reinforce the beam, appropriate use of lenses, vision therapy, visual hygiene, better posture, healthy diet. Uh, if I can say, use of certain amount of prisms, use of binasal patching. So that is a reinforcement of the beam. But we have started going other way around. Now, Matthias Alexander in 1974 used the terms means whereby and end gains. Skeffington also thought similarly, wherein he saw hyperopia and exophoria as a means whereby the homeostatic mechanism, they protect the functional integrity of accommodation and vergence. Okay, hyperopia, like we said, and exophoria, like we said, accommodation to convergence. He saw convergence as means whereby one can localize objects in space, and accommodation as means whereby one could attain meaning from that aspect in visual space. So I'm not too sure how many of you have heard of Skeffington's 4 circles. First of all, it is where is it? First circle says where is it? Unless I fixate upon an object, I will not be able to tell you what that object is or what that word is. So where is it? So the skeletal system, the vergence system, fixates upon the object. Then the next one comes as what is it? Wherein my visceral system kicks in and my accommodation tells me what it is. Then this visual imagery goes further, combines with the speech and auditory system and the vestibular system. And finally, the cortical system is able to tell you where it is, what it all is, which is when we are talking in terms of a big thing, which is called vision. So convergence is centering, accommodation is identification, and Skeffington considered the end goal subserving the question, where is it and what is it? So when centering and identification interacted with speech, auditory, and vestibular anti-gravity mechanisms, we talk a lot about anti-gravity mechanisms. If I'm bending down, I keep bending down, what happens? Am I not going to fall down because my gravity is going up? So if my gravity goes up so much, I have to have anti-gravity mechanisms in my body. And that's a totally different topic that will take a long time. So sometime later, in case someone is interested, we can have a discussion on that, where the centering, identification, it combines with the speech, auditory, and vestibular and anti-gravity mechanisms. And finally, we have something called vision, the emergent vision. So he saw vision as being related to the building of space world. What is my spatial interaction? I interact everything. I understand how far in space a person is, a thing is. So he said vision is essentially being able to retrieve those facets of prior experience that contribute to the goal satisfaction of the moment. The utilization of prior experiences as they relate to the immediate need. Prior experiences. When I started, I talked about cognition. Cognition is my prior experience. Now, all these things combined together, the vision, the emergent, happens only when I have a prior experience. For example, if I see a blue egg, I will wonder what it is. But the third time, the fourth time I see that blue egg and I'm told it is an egg, I'll understand and I will agree that it is an egg, and I will recognize or recognize that as an egg. Any questions in between?
Yeah, we had a couple of questions and comments as well, sir. So let
Yeah,
me just
I'll be happy to.
take a couple of them. If
Yeah,
let's
sure.
related to the topic, then you can cover it up.
Yep.
Uh, so somebody asks, when you say about the imbalance in homeostasis, is that which causes the so-called eye strain then? So would you want to comment on that?
What is homeostatic?
When you say an imbalance in the homeostasis,
Imbalance in the homeostasis. Yeah.
does
Okay.
it cause the so-called eye strain?
Okay. We'll get to that. That will come as a later part of the talk.
Okay,
I
so
will
we'll
come to that. I will come to that. Yeah.
great. And you also did mention that EXO is not acceptable. How
Yeah.
about EXO? Is EXO acceptable or?
EXO to a small extent. I said 4 to 5 prisms is absolutely acceptable. That is considered normal.
Okay, great. And one question is about in case of convergence insufficiency.
Hmm.
This is a bit clinical, but I'm just taking it. So,
Yeah.
in case of convergence insufficiency, patients having exophoria for near,
Hmm.
then how can we differentiate between the normal or abnormal exophoria?
Okay. So, like I said, exophoria of up to 5 prisms for near is good. But then if the exophoria is 10, 20, that's not good. Anything in excess is not acceptable.
Great. Okay.
Okay. So I do not want to have the buffer to such an extent that accommodation has to overwork to overcome that buffer. Okay.
All right. Okay. I think that's pretty much it, which is relevant, and then we can take some more later on.
Sure. So coming to the visual stress, it has plenty of ramifications. Many visual problems are stress induced. Now, when I was studying, computers were not born. Our friend Mark Zuckerberg was just born at that time. Okay. So you people are glued to your mobile phones and visual devices mainly because of that gentleman. I think all of you will agree. Yes or no? Mark Zuckerberg being responsible for a lot of visual stress.
That's right.
Okay.
Many of them
Okay.
say yes. That's really true.
Jokes apart, but then those things did not exist at that time. But did we not have visual stress at that time? I mean, you can't say that reading also will not lead to any visual stress. If I read a book, that will not lead to visual stress, but only digital world will lead to visual stress. So increasing visual demands of the society are increasing the stress induced problems. Obviously, increasing visual demands are increasing. You have to do a lot of digital work nowadays. We cannot say no. It's not possible to say no. So it's very easy for me to say you decrease your screen time, but is it possible? I mean, uh, put your hand on your heart and say that you will not do any digital work. I think out of 169 people, I'm sure 160 will continue to do the same amount of digital work or the screen time. So the stress induced difficulties reduce the efficiencies of performing skills like learning, understanding, and remembering. That is the most important, the crux of the problem. Learning, understanding, and remembering. If I read, I need to understand, I need to learn, I need to remember. Okay. So this is just remember the third point and let's move forward. So the factors influencing visual stress response are physiological arousal, intensity with which the task is pursued, attention given to the task, which is the mental effort, and requiring the task to memorize, information retrieval, problem solving, categorizing, reasoning, etc. So that is where all the problems come, where your visual task has to result in memory, information processing, problem solving, categorizing, etc. Okay. So if you have to study for your exam versus you want to probably do some Facebook work, which is more stressful? Is it studying for the exam more stressful or scanning your Facebook pages? What do they say, Fakhruddin?
Exams.
Exam.
Exams are more stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because that leads to memory, memorizing, information processing, problem solving, etc., etc. It is obviously more stressful.
Yeah. And somebody also did comment that visual stress can also affect the academic performance.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. No doubt about it. So visual stress leads to, so it is mental stress and visual stress. You're equating the two, right? So is it the visual stress which is leading to mental stress or the mental stress leading to visual stress? So both of them go hand in hand. We keep blaming our poor accommodation. Now, I put across a question to you. If you watch television from a distance of 20 feet with full concentration throughout the day, you're watching, uh, let's say, the football matches nowadays, or when you have IPL day in, day out, you keep watching TV. Will you experience eye strain?
Okay, so we are getting some answers. Majority I see is yes, but a couple of them also said no.
Okay, they must be having fantastic eyes. If you if you watch movie from morning till night in a movie theater, will it be okay? So let's move ahead. So coming back to our friend Dr. Skeffington, he mentioned that visual stress results from biologically unacceptable, socially compulsive, visually near-centered task, which provokes an avoidance reaction that becomes a drive to center nearer in visual space. Let's understand this very, very critically. Biologically unacceptable. Nature did not make our eyes for all this crap, which is your digital devices or your so much of near work. Nature did not make, so it is biologically unacceptable. But it is socially compulsive. I am forced to do that. Whether you like it or not, if you have an exam, you have to study. You don't have a choice. You have to see your Facebook. Otherwise, you will be outdated in the society like I am. Okay. So visually near-centered task, which provokes an avoidance reaction. Now, this is visually near-centered task where I'm glued on to my screen or my book or anything, which provokes an avoidance reaction. What is the avoidance reaction? Enough. I can't do it anymore. But then I have to do it. If I have to do it, what happens? Usually, think about it yourself. What will you do? You come closer to the screen. You come closer to the book. Am I right or am I wrong? I have seen people who are uh, looking at something on their mobile phones, and they when they want to see that very when they're getting engrossed in it, they come very close to the mobile phone or the screen. Am I right? What are people saying?
Yeah, yeah, you are right. Personal opinion, yes, also, I guess when we are
Yeah.
engrossed. Yeah.
So we get closer to the screen. So it is something like we say 40 centimeters. But are we always at 40 centimeters or 33 centimeters? Let's not create a rift between the Britishers and the Americans over here. Britishers like 33 centimeters and the Americans like 40 centimeters. Do we always remain at that distance? No way. The first is the relationship between visually near-centered task and the stress response. According to Skeffington, accommodation was never a primary problem. One can sustain prolonged accommodation for considerable time. Like I said, our ciliary muscles work throughout the day. You can sustain prolonged accommodation. It is the skeletal muscles which tire out. It is the skeletal muscles which ache. It is not the smooth muscles. It is not the autonomic nervous system which aches or pains. Okay. He felt limited or inflexible accommodation, that is, insufficiency or infacility, was a result of visual stress and not the cause. So, because of visual stress, all this happened. The cause was not infacility or insufficiency. Okay. So, near vision tasks were major cause of visual stress, not because of nearness of the work or the amount of accommodation, but because of the containment factor. I'll just explain this containment factor to you. Human beings are very open. I put you in a 5x5 room or 5x4 room versus, let's say, a 20x20 room. Which one will you be more comfortable with? A room in which I cannot flex my body, I cannot move around, I cannot work, I cannot do anything. And compared to that, your large, huge 20x20 room where you can move around, you can walk, you can do anything. Which one will you feel more comfortable?
I think almost all the replies have been to the 2020, the bigger room.
The bigger room. We do not like to be contained. And that is precisely what this is causing. Your containment factor, you're contained to your digital screen or your book or whatever, because it is socially compulsive. And the type of intense meaning getting, you need to study, you need to get meaning out of it. If you're a software engineer, he has to go and understand what is written or what is typed out. So there's a meaning getting which is happening that is demanded by the culture and at that distance in space. So you keep going closer and closer. And what happens? Now I come to something called figure and periphery. Now you are glued onto your screen and you miss out the periphery. It is something like missing out the forest for a tree. I hope people can understand that. I am glued onto a tree, but I miss the rest of the forest. I miss the periphery, peripheral awareness, the periphery of. So that is so much more important. If the same maintained attention is imposed on another area in space, such as when using a VDT at intermediate range or at far distance like movie projection, then these other areas of space would become primary causes of visual stress. So it is not accommodation. Accommodation can happen anytime, how much ever you want, but it is a containment. We are containing ourselves. So if I'm watching TV from morning till night, I'm contained to it, and that is causing all the problems. The nearness of the visual task, therefore, is actually less of a problem than those factors that contribute to restraint of movement. I am forcing my eyes to keep on the screen. That is causing the problem, not the accommodation or the nearness of the task. So if you sit in a bus, you sit on your seat, you're comfortable. Do you feel tired after a long journey? You have wonderful business class seat in airplane, but you're forced to be belted on for, let's say, 20 hours. Will you feel tired or will you not feel tired?
Yes,
You're not
definitely.
doing any work.
That's right. Yeah. Everybody says, yes, we will feel tired.
Why do you feel tired? You're comfortable, you're eating, you're drinking, you're doing whatever. But then why do you feel tired? Because you're contained. That is how human beings are. We are not willing to be contained. So, not alone is a sheer nearness factor one of the reasons for organisms to make adaptation, but the fact that he's to get meaning out of the thing that he's doing. Again, socially compulsive. We are contracting the freedom to operate, and that is what is causing the stress. Containment aspect of the biosocial world. Again, we come to the biosocial, the same kind of thing. He keeps talking about it. Brings a constriction of movement patterns involved, limit the ability to aggregate information, and inevitably limit learning ability and internal communication. Nothing harmful in looking at near point. Problem is not nearness. The problem is the containment factor. Our biosocial mechanism, like I just mentioned about the airplane seat or whatever, if you say thou mayest not move, that is not acceptable. There has to be an operational balance between figure and periphery, figure and the rest. Your phobia that all we optometrists are more interested in, it is very, very small amount. The rest of the periphery is what matters. The rest of the world matters. Your rest of the retina, which may not give you 6/6 visual acuity, 20/20 visual acuity, but that matters a lot. Why do people with retinitis pigmentosa have problem? They may have 6/6 visual acuity, but the periphery is gone. That is why they have all that problem. Why do glaucomats have problem? They may have 6/6 visual acuity, but the periphery is gone. That creates all the problem. So there has to be an operational balance between figure and periphery. The next thing that he talks about is the avoidance reaction. Obviously, I am going to feel jittery if I'm sitting in one seat. I'm going to feel jittery. I'm going to move around. I'm going to move my back, move my legs, etc., etc. We require room to operate. This is where I am a firm believer of the 20-20-20 rule. We require room to operate. Get out of that. You have your screen, look away. Okay, recently I was reading about somebody in UK. It's a very famous saying, look at the patch of the green outside your room. What does that mean? What is that patch of green? Anyone can think about it?
Okay, let's see. Wait for some answers. Is it related to look far or look at the trees or something like that?
Look far, yes, you're looking far, no doubt about it. But then, why patch of green?
Maybe they're referring to trees.
Okay, trees, grass, whatever. Why green? Think about it. Think about the sympathetic nervous system. Think about the parasympathetic nervous system. When you see on a duochrome, you see green, you are uncorrected hyperope. Correct? So green means it is stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system. And what is parasympathetic nervous system? Relax, relax and digest. Correct?
Yeah, somebody did also mention that green helps in relaxing the accommodation.
Yeah, that's basically the science or the theory behind syntonexus. Okay, if I look at red, Do I feel relaxed? If I look at blood, will you feel relaxed? I mean, a few can, but I'm sure most of us will not. Okay. I look at red versus green. Green is definitely going to relax me because that is the parasympathetic. So there's a fundamental demand within the organism to escape from any too closely containing space. The surest way to arouse a frenzy of escape activities is to confine any person, young or old, so that movement is impossible. We just talked about that 4 by 4 room or 5 by 5 room. It is going to make you crazy. It's going to make you frenzy. It arouses that frenzy. Person will be okay for a few minutes, few hours, but beyond that, he will like to move away, move out of it. Now, the third concept is the avoidance reaction. It results in the drive to center nearer in space. So, what did we say? You come closer. This is manifested visually as tendency to overconverge or esophoria. So, this is what causes pull-in phenomenon. We call it pull-in phenomenon, the drive to overconverge. So, you have to read, you have to get meaning out of it. I am not able to understand because my mind is not at peace or whatever, or I'm highly interested, so I get engrossed in whatever I'm reading or whatever I'm seeing. So I start coming close. My accommodation starts working faster. I get closer, and then what is happening when I'm coming closer? Am I not over converging when I come closer? Okay, so that is what is going to cause a pull-in phenomenon. So first thing is your near task, avoidance reaction, and that avoidance reaction leads to trying to concentrate more or converge further, and that causes esophoria. And we discussed earlier, esophoria is not acceptable. That's not the right thing to happen. Stress response is associated with a tendency to constrict physiologically, functionally, and perceptually. What happens to a porcupine? If you throw something, throw a stone at porcupine, what happens to it? Or what happens to a turtle? Does it not constrict? Porcupine rolls up into a ball. The turtle goes into the shell. Why do they do that? Constriction. Constriction always occurs for the purpose of survival, basic biological reaction to protect the organism. And that's exactly what is happening when we do this. So let's discuss this stress model of Skeffington. At any point in space where a person is seeing clearly and singly, one should be using 1 unit of accommodation against 1 unit of convergence. I'm not talking of the prism diopters versus the lenticular diopters. I'm talking only units. So 1 unit of accommodation, 1 unit of convergence. Now, when visually centered tasks are set up, which results in 2 units of accommodation, but then there's 1 unit of convergence. What will happen? The accommodation and convergence should go hand in hand. So 2 units of accommodation will induce 2 units of convergence, and the person needs to converge closer. And when that convergence happens, it has to be blocked. Because if you start over converging, what happens? What happens when you over converge? It leads to breaking. So blur, break, recovery. Your blur was taken care of by over accommodating. But when you converge more, it leads to more esophoria, and ultimately that near point of convergence is reached and you break. So the organism maintains a distorted relationship of 2 units of accommodation to 1 unit of convergence. then that is not going to work because he's going to come closer. He's going to come closer to the screen. So active inhibition in tension results in constriction and reduced performance. I will not be able to perform well. So what does that happen? It leads to more stress, visual stress, which could possibly lead to headaches, eye strain, etc., etc. And that continues and multiplies, and this is exactly what is happening to us. So we should find some way in which I am allowed to center nearer using the same amount of accommodation or lesser amount of accommodation. So how can I center nearer using the accommodation that is required? The only way is plus lens prescribed for near use. Okay. If I use plus lens for near use, it is relaxing my accommodation. But when I use plus, I have to go closer to the object to get it in focus. So I am centering nearer. I am using certain amount of accommodation. So because of that accommodation, my convergence is in absolute balance, and I am able to have single, clear, and comfortable vision without any tension. What is the next thing that we use? We use Chota basin prisms. And mind you, these plus lenses, you may think that we, lots of organizations, the manufacturers, they have those progressive lenses. No way. Not to prescribe progressive lenses. The 0.5 ads progressive, plano 0.5 ads or 0.75 ad progressives. No. I'll tell you the reason. You are able to see clearly. You do not have presbyopia. You do not, if I can see clearly through the distance area, why will I raise my head and try to look through the near area? How much ever I tell you, you're not going to do that. You are going to see from the top part, which is the plano area. You're going to read from there. How do we prescribe these near use plus? Single vision, simple single vision glasses. Very simple single vision glasses, and a very small amount of plus 0.5, that is more than now, plus 0.75, probably with a two prism base in or something. And the best of all, give a small binasal patch that will create all the difference that is there to this world of digital eye strain. We do not require on any of those funny coatings. We do not require any hi-fi stuff. I think we have tried to understand considerable amount how this digital eye strain occurs and how we are able to, what is the physiology behind this. Now, we talked about the autonomic nervous system and the stress. Sympathetic response that leads to the stress, and sympathetic response that leads to all the problems. Okay. Darrell Boyd Harmon, all of us have heard of the Harmon distance. He was not an optometrist, but worked so much with lenses, etc., as compared to a lot of optometrists. What he used, his tools were retinoscopy and electromyography. He reported an against movement and constriction of pupil when the subject observed the closer object. What he did was, he did retinoscopy, something like what we do, MEM retinoscopy. And this became the basis of the development of stress point retinoscopy by Robert Kraskin. Fantastic work done by Robert Kraskin, where he talked of stress point retinoscopy and prescribed on the basis of stress point retinoscopy. But Harmon, when he was asked, because this again created a problem. When there's a stress, there has to be a sympathetic reaction. So sympathetic has to precede parasympathetic. Unless I have a problem, why will I relax? I will continue to function. I will continue to work. So sympathetic is the one which is going to cause a problem. So when Harmon was asked about it, what he said was, yes, I did notice before the pupil constricted, and before my reflex in the retinoscopy went into against movement, I saw the pupils expand and I saw a good width. So there was a sympathetic, which was followed by parasympathetic. Probably all of you can check that out and do in your retinoscopy. That's a very, very interesting way of seeing how the sympathetic and the parasympathetic are working in harmony. Today's relevance, Skeffington's thought they have a relevance in the general visual stress and general stress. We have a lot of stress. We keep talking of stress, and that causes even more stress, and that leads to more and more of strain. Increase in culture mediated visual requirements. Obviously, we have a lot more friends. We have Facebook, Twitter, blah, 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 blah. I don't know how many. And they keep on increasing day in, day out. So the culture mediated visual requirements are increasing every day. We are obviously using more visual display terminals, which again are not the only reason. We are containing ourselves. Increase in myopia, again, a very, very critical question. Is it really so, or are we making too much out of it? Search for myopia control. Again, we are creating a lot of fuss about it. Are we really having a problem called myopia, or are we creating myopia? Big question to debate upon. So this is beyond the scope of discussion over here. Search for visual stress and general stress reduction modalities. How do we reduce this visual stress? How do we reduce this general stress? We make a lot of money selling all those glasses with those funny coatings. Are they really required? Are we really required to get those expensive progressive glasses? I don't know what all the names are, but then simple single vision plus 0.5, how much will it cost? Simple small base in prism, how much will it cost? Your binasal patch is going to cost you nothing, absolutely nothing. Why can't we look at those reduction modalities? Think about what this gentleman Skeffington and so many others wrote years before the digital screens, mobile phones, etc., came into the existence. They always had solutions. We refrain from using them, popularizing them, practicing them. Obviously, they're not going to get you great money, but they will definitely get you great satisfaction. They will make lot more people happy. We are creating a lot of hangama about visual stress. We need to understand why this visual stress and how we can solve it. Still, nothing is lost. Behavioral optometry, very simple way of working with it. Thanks to Dr. Skeffington, and thanks everyone for listening to me. In case you have any questions, you are most welcome to write to me.
So this is the first question, sir. I'm just putting it up here. These were some questions we received during registration. I guess most of you have already answered, but I'm just putting it here so that you can share a bit of more insights if you would.
Sure.
So the first question is the role of excessive use of digital device and the development of manifest deviation in children. So any thoughts of that? Does this
manifest deviation, do I understand it is the tropia?
Yeah, I think yes.
I don't see any such thing. I mean, I work in a VT clinic morning till evening, but I don't see any manifest deviation increasing because of like I said, our muscles are very, very strong. I mean, just imagine saying your heart is getting tired because of something and it stops functioning. It's not going to happen. I seriously don't see development of manifest deviation in children. And if it is so, I think we are making a bit too much out of it. We need to look at other causes. I don't think there's an increase in incidence or prevalence of tropia.
Okay, great. Let's look at another question. I think also you just covered this, but do you think that giving these fancy coatings, as you said, one of it, I think anti-reflective coatings or anti-reflective glasses would reduce eye strain? What do you
See,
think?
anti-glare glass is Polaroid glass.
Anti-glare, yeah.
Okay. Now, anti-glare glass, yes, I would like people to use, but can you use anti-glare glasses for reading on computer? I don't think we can use them. I mean, I can definitely understand using anti-glare glasses for driving,
Yeah.
or when you are playing cricket or whatever, you use anti-glare glasses that cuts off the glare. If it is anti-reflection, if this question means anti-reflection coating, now if I do not have a refractive error, what is it going to cut? See,
Yeah.
I can understand if I have a refractive error, there's a reflection because I'm wearing spectacles. There is going to be a reflection from the front and the back surface of the glass, from the lens. I can understand you definitely require anti-reflection coating. But if I do not have a refractive error,
Yeah.
then where is the question of where is this reflection going to come from? So it's something like I create a problem to get rid of some problem. So first I have to wear a plain glass so that it starts reflecting, and then I have to have an anti-reflection coating. Beats me.
Great. Yeah, I
And I
think.
don't think air can cause any kind of reflection.
Yeah. Okay, great. So it also reflects the points about the myopia control. What you were saying, somebody did mention on the chat as well. So we are creating that myopia and then controlling it. So it's something like that.
Absolutely. See, you are over prescribing minus, and your lens is fantastic. It gets used to whatever you are. So it is something like you are getting used to the crutches called glasses, and you have got used to that 0.5. That 0.5 over a period of time become 0.75, 1, 1.25, etc., etc., and it goes on.
Yeah. Okay. So another question here, again coming to more of these specially designed lenses and coatings and all. Any opinions about these blue cut lenses? Would they help? Would they?
You have you have plenty of studies already which are saying, and most of you will agree with me, what you have thought, what you have read, and blue cut lenses and blue cut coatings, what those studies are talking about. I mean, in India, we use a lot of fluorescent light. What about the blue light from there? Do you use those when you walk out in sunlight? All these years we walked in sunlight. I don't think we cut that blue. But
Yeah.
then, do you think your digital screens, etc., create more blue light as compared to sunlight? I don't know. So I am not too sure if these fancy coatings are really required. But then, yeah, it makes a lot of money for you. That's fine.
Yeah.
And migraine. Uh, Migraine is a totally different topic and a subject. We overdiagnose migraine. Migraine is really overdiagnosed.
All right. Yeah.
I
So
don't know what is this FL41.
I think it's a special. I'm just guessing that it's a special kind of filter. FL, I guess, is for filter 41,
I don't
which
know. I
actually.
don't know. I'm not educated enough to talk on that, so I'll not take that.
Okay, great. So probably, I think the whole idea, as you said, is the plus point 0.5 in single vision prescription, with probably some small base in two base in prism would do the job rather than doing all of this fancy stuff.
See, if you limit yourself to very simple basic stuff, I think we can sort out most of the problems. We don't need to expand our, okay, fine. You can use jargon, you can use a lot of things, but then if you have basic visual hygiene and very basic things that I spoke about, digital eye strain is nothing very big.
Okay, great. And I think the next question again, I think we already answered, but would you want to comment on the effect of blue light on eye and brain? Any short answer? I know it's a very big thing again because it's related to all these pathway and stimulations and all that. But
Hmm.
just quickly, if you would like to put up some words there.
See, Hindi mein we say something bal ki khal nikalna. Okay, so like I said, blue light has always existed. It's nothing very new. So was it affecting our eyes and the brain? Obviously, I will never recommend using a mobile phone 5 centimeters from your eye under the blanket. Okay, all those are. I very clearly spoke about visual hygiene. So visual hygiene does not allow you to use anything. Forget uh, your devices, even a book. Would you like to read a book so close to your eye under the blanket? You will not. So yeah, blue light obviously, if now you have all these screens with the blue cut filters and all whatever. So anyway, we are cutting down on that. Yes, it affects the eyes, it affects the brain, but then are we not making too much out of it? That's my question. So I'm not too sure, but then let the neurologists answer those questions. I don't think any neurologists have been talking so much about it as much as optometrists are.
Great. And another question here is, do you think there is any relation of digital eye strain and the dark circle at the periphery of the eyes?
It's as much as remaining awake, whether you remain use the digital screen or not. If you remain awake and don't sleep, do you not develop eye circles, the dark circles around eyes? So more you use, let's not call it digital eye strain. More you are remaining awake, more you are looking at your tools. Even if you're reading, why do we say digital eye strain? If I was reading a book and I did not sleep for 20 hours, 30 hours, I will definitely develop dark circles. So let's not call it digital eye strain related dark circles, but then basically all of us require about 8 to 10 hours of sleep. I mean, I don't, but then
Yeah, it's a normal tendency, or that's the normal sleep cycle people should have for
yeah,
healthy
yeah,
well-being.
and that will avoid all that. So I don't think we should be relating the dark circles around the eyes to digital eye strain or digital screen time or whatever. It is basically you require sleep, and once you sleep, you're fine. I'm
Okay,
sure people during exams they do develop dark circles. Why do they do that? And I'm not talking now, even during my time. We did not have any computers, we did not have mobile phones, but we did.
that's true. Yeah. And do you think there is any association with the effect of refractive error and dry eyes because of the digital eye strain?
Refractive error, I would not agree. Dry eye, yes.
Okay.
Basically, the environment in which you are living. If you're in Chennai, I don't think you will develop that much of dry eyes also because it's pretty humid. Okay. But yes, that is very well known factor that when you're looking at anything, whether it is book or digital device or anything, you're keeping your eyes wider open, and that leads to evaporation of tears. Now, when we talked about computer vision syndrome about 20 odd years back, we talked about the desktop. We did not have your mobile phones. We did not have your tablets. Now, that is when we said your angle, the viewing angle was high, because of which your eyes were wider open. You don't keep your mobile phone at this angle, right? You don't keep your mobile phone as high as your desktop. So that is the time when we are talking in terms of the visual angle and the amount, the palpebral aperture that was open. So it was more open when you're looking at a desktop. But now with mobiles and tablets, etc., it's almost same as your book or whatever. But then, yes, the duration for which you, or the blink rate obviously comes down. That does lead to dry eye.
Okay, great. And the other question here is again, when we talk about accommodation, and you did mention that, it depends on the distance and we do accommodate at different distances differently. So how about the far distance? What about the accommodation at probably at 6 meter? What time do we use to accommodate, or do we
It's
use it?
accommodation is supposed to be relaxed at 6 meters.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, but are we always looking at 6 meters? Optically, yes, it is supposed to be relaxed. Okay, but are we always looking at 6 meters? Very, very rare. Most times we are much closer than 6 meters. That's another topic which, if time permits, someday we will talk about it, where we talk in terms of accommodation, which is at an intermediate distance. We always consider that the convergence at intermediate distance. So our eyes are always in a state of accommodation.
Yeah. All right. And so the other question here again is, when we talk about the near task, so we did mention that we are not blaming the digital era. So what should be our answer to this stress related complaints of near tasks? How should we go about thinking on?
I think I did tell you. It's very, very simple. It's a unnatural relationship between the skeletal and the autonomic nervous system that we are leading to. So how can we take care of it? Small plus for near alone. I'm not talking of constant wear. Small plus, give a plus 0.5. Give a small amount of basin prism, maybe 2 prism basin. And the best thing that I like to do is give a binasal patch. And that takes a lot. Please try and use a binasal patch, and then you'll understand how much of difference it creates. There's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation about binasal patch, that it is given for ESO deviations alone. It's a huge long topic where we can talk for hours together, where we are talking in terms of the figure and periphery. Most of our eyes are like this. We need the peripheral fusion to happen. So to answer this question, what I would say is peripheral fusion is the answer, is the key. And that takes care of so much of problems. Let's not blame. It is nature did not create these devices. So obviously we are living in unnatural surroundings, unnatural world. No doubt about it. But we need to survive. And today, if someone tells me that you can survive without your digital devices, wonderful. I'll be very happy. I can't. Okay. We will not have this webinar. Where will we have this? If I'm not using my mobile phone, how will I communicate? It is, we have become, we have got so embroiled in all this, we cannot say that we can live without it today. It's very easy to say that, okay, fine, cut down your screen time by 30%, cut down your screen time by 50%, but is it possible? Let me ask you. And if it is not possible, we have to make adjustments, and this is the way we can make adjustments.
That's right. And again, sir, when we talk about prescribing, I think you did also mention that, prescribe single vision lenses just
it's for near, not for distance.
Not for distance. Yeah.
No.
Would that hinder into patients? What happens is when we talk about 20, I'm just relating this to the 20.
Yeah.
So let's say we tell patients that every 20 minutes, we would recommend them to look at far about 20 feet for some time and, relax.
Yeah.
So would that near glasses only be something of a disturbance that, they might just use the glasses and look at far? And would that be a problem? Or you think proper advice is really something which we should look at?
Yeah, so those are the practical problems that you're talking of, obviously. So if Usually the plus 0.5 is not going to cause so much of blurring for distance. I don't think plus 0.5 causes drastic blur for distance. So we are fine with that much of blur. The the subject understands that there is going to be a problem and they get used to it considerably well. But I would personally say, even if I give a binasal patch, that is good. It does not cause any blurring. It does not cause any other problems. So let me read this question. No, it will not cause any visual stress when you come from distance to near. Multifocal, that's a problem. Multifocal is a problem, like I said. If I am able to see, like you said, 20-year-old, if he can see through the distance area, why will he change his position like this to look through the progressive area or a bifocal? Okay. So it's a very well-studied phenomenon where these people, when they are given progressives, they tend to see through the distance part and not through the near area. It's just psychological that you have spent so much of money. You have spent about 15,000-20,000 rupees on that glass, so everything's fine.
Yeah.
But then it is a very well, and that too you'll use a small glass over there. Where will you accommodate the near? Where will you accommodate distance? It's very, very difficult. So plenty of studies have been done where they found that the people while reading were using only the distance area or maybe the intermediate area, which did not have so much of plus.
Okay. Yeah. So I think to overcome all of these issues, whether the plus is really being used, it's good to give a single vision. I mean that's the whole idea.
Is the simplest thing, but then if you can create, you may argue with me that you will put the segment higher or create a office design or something. Fine, it's all good. I have no problems. Till the time the person is looking through the plus, I'm fine.
Yeah. And the added plus, what we are saying that, plus O50 at near, do you recommend it for all type of refractive errors, or do you think that myopes would work well than hyperope? Is it related?
Plus 250?
Yeah. Plus 0.5 for reading, the added.
Plus 0.5.
Yeah.
It's not for reading. It's for near. It's a,
Yeah.
I would not call it a reading glass. I will call it a near work glass or something like that, or a computer glass or something like that.
Right. And there's one question which I see here, like, when we are talking about these near glasses, any tips on how can we convey this to our patients? Because our patients will feel like, what's happening? Why should I change my glasses? Any tips on how should we convey?
Yeah, that is one particular thing that we talk a lot to the patient when we are prescribing. We explain considerable amount of it and then alone prescribe, because a number of them, when they go to the optician says, no, you don't require anything. The near glasses are used only for 40 plus. You're only 20. Why do you require near? Okay, so we explain to the patient and the parents or whoever has come, college going people, we explain. And whatever I told you, we explain in very simple layman language so that the person is able to understand. And after that, it's up to him or her. Take it or leave it. I know I don't do dispensing myself, but then I know a lot of my friends, they come and tell me that the patient comes and he says, yes, I want this coating. By all means, take it. I'm not going to lose anything if you have an anti-reflection coating and it gives you a psychological feeling that it cuts down the glare from the oncoming headlight. I'm fine with it. So if psychologically, if it is helping you, please go ahead by all means. But I'm talking from the prescription perspective. From the prescription perspective, I would like to explain to my patient, that these are the things, and this is what I'm going to prescribe, and this is the reason why I'm prescribing this. And please, if you still feel, go purchase what you like.
I think patient education, what is important, and we
Yes,
should understand why are we doing this, and uh,
yes. It's very, very important that we
and-
talk to our patients rather than just scribble something on the prescription pad and then give it to them and go buy it. No, you
yeah,
definitely owe it to your patient. He's paying you for your consultation. You definitely owe it to your patient to explain. And I think your discussion with the patient should be more than your examination time.
yeah, that's
My
again.
feeling, uh, I'm sure there will be a lot more people who will think otherwise, but then that is my feeling. And that is in my practice, that's what I do. I talk a lot with my patients.
That's right. And apart from doing all these near glasses, what we mentioned, do you also do some ergonomic changes? Any suggestions
Yeah,
on that?
yeah, yeah. Ergonomy is very important. So, like I told you about the lighting levels,
Yeah,
you have to be very, very careful about the lighting levels, the brightness of the screen, what you're using, very important. You don't keep it very bright, you don't keep it very dull. Uh, Youngsters, they are very happy keeping it very, very low, the brightness very low. For example, my daughter keeps it very low. Probably she doesn't want me to see what she's seeing. So that could possibly be the reason. But then you can understand when the brightness is low, do you not accommodate more? And when you accommodate more, again the same problem, the vicious circle of convergence and containment and all that comes in. So all these people are there like this on their mobile devices. So yes, earlier days we never used to talk so much about the brightness and the lighting levels. I talk a lot about the brightness and lighting levels. If you remember, your parents might used to tell you not to watch TV in a completely dark room. Yeah, there was very much of sense in that because total dark room, you're looking at that again, all whatever talked, it came in. Okay. So there had to be some amount of ambient illumination. Why do we talk about ambient illumination? Now, if I am looking at a mobile device or whatever, a tablet or computer or laptop or lying down, am I not creating a problem between my versions and accommodation? So when you say ergonomics, very, very important because that creates a whole lot of changes in the way you are using your devices. But if I tell you use it only at 40 centimeters, I think I'm talking a bit too much if I say that, okay, fine, you're going to keep it at 40 centimeters and keep it all the time at 40 centimeters. And we are not going to have those like a number of photographs that I saw of the Chinese schools where they put a rod and you can't go beyond that.
yeah,
I don't think we can work in that kind of system where we put a rod on the hand of the child and he can't flex it so that he can't get the mobile closer. But then, yeah, certain things have to be followed, and to the maximum extent, whatever they can follow, it will be good. If they cannot, we are there to supplement that with different therapies, different tools that we talked about. So I did not specifically talk about vision therapy as such to take care of a lot of these problems. We do a lot of that. So we can, again, talking in terms of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So you're working on accommodation and the version system. You can create so much of help rather than, you know, if I give a minus lens, it is going to cut down my periphery and increase my figure. So the ground is gone. So that's what is going to create, and more myopia that is going to create more and more of that problem.
yeah. All right. And so one last question before we leave for today. This is again something which you talked about in the summary, but do you think is because of what we are learning during when we are taught is kind of different. We learn about different coatings and different types of lenses and all that. Would that be probably the culprit of the overdiagnosis and overprescribing of these? Because we didn't have such kind of experience of what we discussed today. So, any thoughts on that?
See, it's basically I might be oversaying a few things, but then that is the fact of life. It is totally related to economy.
Yeah.
Now, the people who have made those coatings have spent quite a lot of time, energy, and money to create them. And the people who have purchased those patents or the rights to use those coatings, etc., I'm not naming anything. But
Yeah.
then, if I have spent 10 billion rupees to purchase a patent of something which I felt was fantastic, do I not have to recover that money? How do I recover it? I have to publicize that. I have to put it in the market. And to put it into the market, what best other than creating some studies?
Yeah.
Okay. It comes in your books, it becomes a big hangama wherein we talk so much about these things. I'm not saying that all of that is humbug, but then do we really require them? We have to think as medical professionals, healthcare professionals, we have to think before accepting anything. That's where I said question. So a lot of things are created which may be necessary, may not be necessary. So we have to take an advised understanding of all what we are prescribing. It is not that we have to go as a thumb rule and prescribe everything. So, like you said, it is being taught. A lot of us talk about it. A lot of us, I'm biting a lot of my words, but then for a very simple reason, I'm in a big public. So, I may be understood or misunderstood also. So,
Yeah, I think it's as you said, sir. It's a kind of something which you should try, and probably it works. And think and question yourself why this, and then we can make some decision. We can't say that these fancy coating does not work, but do they really work? Is what is the question. So something like that. We
see,
need to
it
try.
is it is a difference between luxury and necessity.
Yeah.
Is it necessity? If it is absolute essential, yes, please go ahead by all means. But if it is not essential, if it is between, it's a luxury, choice is yours. I mean, I can use a simple cryptok bifocal versus the fanciest progressive. I'm going to see the same. I mean, I'll be able to read, I'll be able to look at distance with both, right? So a high-end progressive, which may cost me about a million rupees or whatever, versus a few hundred rupees of a bifocal. That is luxury, that is necessity. So obviously, necessity has to be taken care of. Luxury is your choice.
All right. I think that clears pretty much of it. So that's with that. So I think we have taken most of the questions. There are some more questions, but we'll try to take them in some other way. But thank you so much, sir, for sharing your experience and sharing your
You're
thought.
most welcome, Fakhruddin, and thanks very much for having me and bearing with me for so long and so many months also prior to this. I did see a number of questions which are popping up. I'll be
Yeah.
more than happy to respond to most of them if you can send them across to me. If you can collate them, I'll be more than happy to uh, chat with them because I know a lot of those people who are asking those questions. So I can on your forum also. I mean, through emails, if you have any connections, I will be happy to
Sure.
respond to them.
We'll do that. We'll do that, sir. So those, we have this feedback form, which, we'll be sharing it on the chat. What you can do is, if you have any more questions, you can put it up on the feedback form, and we'll get you connected with sir, and we can start the discussion from there onwards.
Sure.
That's right.
Like I said, this is not an exhaustive talk on this particular topic. There's a lot to think and discuss, but then basically kindling of brainwave, nothing else.
Yeah. So with that, thank you so much, sir, for giving us the time, and we'll definitely get back to you with the questions on the feedback, and we'll see how we can answer those and connect with people.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks for bearing with me.
Most welcome. So to the attendees, we do have session planned next weekend. So please do join us next week, and until then, take care, stay safe, and see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thanks very much. Thank you.